G'day, folks. Thanks for joining us for another Easy Agile podcast. This morning, I'm joined by Em Campbell-Pretty of Pretty Agile. Em is one of 22 SAFE Fellows globally, and she's been doing agile transformations at scale for over a decade now. She's also the author of two books, The Art of Avoiding a Train Wreck and Tribal Unity. So, all about culture and psychological safety here. And all about obviously scaling agile release trains, tips and tricks. My key takeaways that I was really jazzed about, the traits of effective leaders for scaling agile transformations and being effective organizations. Trust, as in trusting their people, an openness to learning and a willingness to learn, the ability to experiment and treat things as failures if they are failures, and discipline. And Em and I talked a bit about discipline today as a trait of leaders. And it's a really great episode, and I took a lot from it. And you'll hear my takeaways at the end and what I need to go and learn after spending some time with Em this morning. So let's get started. How many weeks a year are you typically on the road?
How many weeks a year am I typically on the road? A lot, most. So it would be unusual for me to spend 4 weeks without going somewhere. Like that would be unusual. I think I must, I don't travel every week, but I travel most weeks, and I travel in big blocks, right? So I'll go and do, so just before the lockdown, we did 3 weeks in Auckland. So that was in February, March. We went to Auckland, we had a client in Auckland, we just stayed there. So 3 weeks in Auckland, came back here and did not return to Auckland, returned to support that client virtually over Teams and Zoom was how that one went. But yeah, normally between, running around Australia, Southeast Asia, Hong Kong, Singapore, Manila, the US, New Zealand, not home that often normally. This has been truly bizarre.
So this is a very unusual year for someone like yourself that's flying around visiting clients all over the world.
Absolutely. It's been a very strange year. It's an interesting difference on energy as well. You're not flying all the time, I think is good for my body. I feel the difference. I also feel the difference sitting in a chair all the time. So I was, traveling a lot, but I was on my feet most days when I was working. And now if I'm working, I'm sitting a lot.
Down.
So
yeah.
it's that's interesting. But I don't miss the jet lag at all. I don't miss the amount of time the travel consumes at all. In fact, it's been nice. I've had a little bit of headspace. I've probably blogged more this year than I have in a few years because I've just had some headspace and being able to think. But I don't get to see the world either, and all my holidays got cancelled. So never mind work. I had trips to Europe. I was supposed to be 4 weeks from now. I was supposed to be in Canada seeing polar bears.
Oh,
tell me about it.
Well, I would love to see polar bears. They look so cuddly on TV. I'm not sure that would actually be the circumstance if I was to try and approach one and give one a cuddle. But
yeah, I don't think cuddling was involved. I was told I could bring a camera and a tripod, which means obviously I'm going to stand some distance away from this polar bear and take photos. But that will not be happening either. So no holidays and no travel for work. And of course, being in Melbourne, not even any let's just go to Dalsford.
Coffee or anything like that. Nothing. Yeah, because you've been on legit lockdown.
Yeah.
So tell me then about the shift over the last 10 or 15 years in these scaled agile transformations. And obviously today, like you described with this client in Auckland, everything's got to be remote.
Yeah.
Presumably not as effective, but I'd love to get a sense of what the evolution is from the transformations 10 years ago, banking, telcos, that sort of environment, to the clients that you're working with today. And how, describe what it was like 10 years ago.
So 10 years ago, and it's so interesting to reflect on this now, I read Scaling Software Agility, which is a book that Dean published in 2007. And then I discovered that wasn't the latest book. So then I read Agile Software Requirements. This is 2011. And I'm this crazy, angry business sponsor with this program of work I've been sponsoring for 5 years. It's never delivered anything. And in the
You were the crazy, angry business sponsor.
Yeah. I was the crazy. I was very angry. You would be angry too if you were me. I refer to it now as the money fire. So basically, here's my job, right? Go to the CFO, ask for money. Give the money to IT. IT, lights a match, sets us on fire. Comes back, asks me for money. I get to go back to the CFO and say I need more money. 5 years. 5 years. That's all I did. Ask for money and try to explain where the other money went. Anyway, in the strangest restructure ever, I end up the technology GM for the same group I had been the business sponsor of for the past 5 years. Apparently, they couldn't find anybody appropriately qualified. So, you can do it, Em. Sure. So, I'm a bit of a geek, so I read books, and I'm reading these books by Leffingwell because they'd been doing some agile. They've been doing something they've been calling agile. Let's just go with that. And it was interesting to me because I could see, little rays of light, but it still wasn't really making anything happen. So hence the reading. And Dean's books talk about this agile release train, and that sounds cool. We should so do this thing. So I set about launching this train at Telstra in early 2012. It wasn't called Safe, right? It was just the books and this thing called an agile release train. Now, to look back, 10 years ago, it wasn't called Safe. People weren't running around doing this. I was not actually really qualified for the job I was in. Well, I wasn't a technology leader by any stretch of the imagination. And I decided that I'm just going to launch an agile release train. So, they were sort of rare and unusual beasts. And I'm not sure I really understood that when I went down the path of doing it. I'm big on I read it in a book, I read it in a blog, I heard it at a conference, I'll just try it. That's very much always been my mental model. So I read it in a book and I just tried it. Then we discover that actually literally nobody is doing this. So it becomes Australia's first agile release train and Australia's first safe implementation. And oh boy, have I learned a lot since then.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was reflecting on that because I dug out The Art of Avoiding a Train Wreck, right? I was like, and this is one of the ones that Tegan, you signed for Tegan. But obviously you've learnt a ton since then because you've managed to put together a tome of tips and tricks and things to avoid as you are pursuing these transformations. As an industry, though, I mean, I guess this spans many industries, but as a practice these days, are we actually getting better at these transformations? Are we still, are there companies out there today, Em, that are still taking piles of money and setting it on fire?
So I think I meet people every day who hear my story and go, oh my God, did you used to work here?
Yeah, right.
So, I think there's still many, many organizations that have an experience that resonates with that is like the experience I had back in 2010 and what have you. So it seems to be something that really resonates with people. And I guess so many of the businesses we go into now either are not agile at all, or I guess like my world was doing something they call agile. And what we find is the something that they call agile, I don't want to say it's not agile, but it leaves a lot to be desired.
They're on a journey, right?
Yeah, well, I guess so, because they end up having a conversation with us. So they understand that what they're doing is not enough. They understand that what they're doing isn't getting them the results that they want. I don't know that they understand why. It's interesting to me sometimes that they look to SAFe, because I one of the, you asked me about, how's the client base changed, and one of the things that's really interesting in Australia is we get far more of the small to medium sized companies now than the big ones. So they're companies that consider themselves agile, but we're calling them the startups that are no longer startups, right? These are organizations that they're generally old 10, 20-year-old startups, and they're scaling, and they see their problem as a scaling problem. So that's what leads them to a conversation around the Scaled Agile framework. And when we look at them through a SAFe lens, we go, gee, you're tiny. But okay, I can see that, you can have an agile release train, and it won't do you any harm. And in fact, it would probably, help you a lot in terms of mid-range planning, because mid-range planning just seems to be a non-existent for a lot of these organizations. Prioritization, which seems to, a lot of these small organizations very knee-jerky in terms of how they prioritize, bouncing from one thing to the
Are they
other.
reacting to the market, or are they reacting to the leaders' kind of maybe the lack of discipline in the leadership?
You know what? They would say they're reacting to the market. I would say they've got a discipline issue.
Okay.
So, it's I read, obviously big reader, last summer, obviously Australian summer, US winter. I read Melissa Perry's the Build Trap, and interesting book, and you're well respected thought leader in product management. Not a big fan of SAFe, probably not a big fan of Agile either, was the sort of takeaway I had from her book. But the thing that she does talk about that I really thought was valuable was the lunacy in chasing your competitors. So building features because your competitors built them, or building features to land a contract or retain a customer. So I thought she sees all of that as lunacy, and I tend to agree. So that was that's kind of interesting. Her perspective is you don't know if the competitor's actually having any luck with that thing that they've built. So if you build it because they built it, you don't know. You have no idea. So don't just build it because they built it. It might not be doing them any favors either. And of course, once you start just doing random stuff for this big customer or this big client, you start to lose your way as an organization. People end up with completely different versions of their products, branches that they can't integrate anymore. It's interesting. So when I look at that, I go, I feel like there's a discipline issue in some of these organizations at the leadership level. What is it we're trying to do? What is our vision? What is our mission? What is our market? What are we doing to test and learn in that market, as opposed to just scattergun, let's do everything, grab everything. Oh my goodness, they're doing that over there. Stop this, start this, stop this. And of course, if you're stopping and starting all the time, you're not delivering anything. And that seems to be something that we see a lot with these organizations. They're not delivering, and I'm not saying their delivery mechanism is perfect. There's challenges there too, but some part of the problem is the inability to stay a course, pick a course and stay a course. And I'm not saying don't pivot, right? Because that's stupid too, but be more deliberate in your choices to pivot, perhaps.
Do you get a sense, Em, that there are leadership teams in various geographic regions that are more effective at this, are more effective at that long-term planning and having that discipline and that methodical approach to delivery over an extended time period?
I think regions and cultures and nationalities certainly play a role in the leadership, I don't know, personality. I don't know that I could say, when I've worked in this country or this part of the world, that their leaders are better at forethought. I think some cultures lend themselves to lean and agile more than others. Hierarchical cultures are really, really challenging. and that doesn't, that can be both a geographic thing, but it can also just be an industry thing, right? So, government can be very hierarchical. The banks can be very hierarchical. Some of the Asian cultures are very hierarchical. But some companies are just very, very hierarchical as well. So who owns the company, who leads the company, all of that can play a big role in what's acceptable, because so much of success in this scaled agile journey comes down to a leadership that is willing to trust the teams, a leadership that is willing to learn, a leadership that's willing to experiment, and a leadership that's prepared to be disciplined.
So leadership that with trusting the teams,
Yeah,
willing to learn, willing to experiment,
yeah.
and with discipline. They're like those four things that you. Yeah. Okay. I'll make a note of those, Em. I'll come back to those.
Uh-oh.
Trust, learn, experiment, and discipline. I'm interested, I guess, this year being a very interesting, a very unique year for doing remote, transformation work and coaching and consulting. 10 years ago, what was a percentage of remote team members, distributed teams, and now you've basically, I think the big banks in Australia aren't even going back to the office till 2021. Atlassian's not going back to the office till 2021. Twitter, Jack Dorsey, my old CEO, said, we're work from home forever, sort of thing.
Yeah.
What's the takeaway for this year, and what do you expect for 2021 and beyond?
So, look, this year has been eye-opening. And look, some things work, some things are as I would have anticipated, some things have been different. So we're seeing entire organizations going online. We're seeing the teams are online, the PI planning's online, everything's online. That's actually in some ways opened up opportunity.
Yeah.
So where we've had clients who have had the most odd setups in terms of distribution, and you can make a train work where you've got teams across two locations, but we're big fans of the entire team is in Sydney or the entire team is in India. We don't have half the team in Sydney and half the team in India, but organizations really struggle with that, because perhaps all the testers are in India and then you want a tester on every team, and now you've got a problem. How do you create a complete team and not cross the time zones? So the opportunity becomes, if I can find teams that are not physically co-located but time zone friendly, I have a little bit more option. So I can have a train that operates between I don't know, Sydney and India. I can find a 4-hour overlap in their day, and I can insist that team works 100% online. So the big thing that we'd advise against is, I don't want that team hybrid, right? I don't want 3 people sitting in the office in Sydney and 3 people sitting in their homes in India. I want everybody online. I want an even playing field, and I think we can do that now in a way that is more acceptable than before. So it's the same advice I was giving, back when I wrote Tribal Unity, same advice, right? So 2016, everybody equal playing field. If you're going to be distributed, everyone has to be online, as opposed to some people online and some people in a room. So that's a more acceptable answer now than it was prior to this year. So I think that's good. I think that's good. I think
And in 2021, then, Em, you mean this is just going to play forward? Like, you don't see this. I guess there's going to be a reversion of some of these companies back to the office because they've got huge real estate and workplace infrastructure already.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, we're seeing clients closing offices the same way that you see some of the companies in the US doing that. We're also seeing parts of Australia and New Zealand with no particular COVID impact at this point, actually going back into the office. So we're and having created those is that example of, you know, teams that are crossing time zones and then going back into the office and going to that hybrid space. So that's interesting. And
So where I mean, you're back into that environment where you might have some people working together in an office that can get
yeah,
a cup of coffee together, and then some that are stuck still at home.
yeah,
I guess it's not just even regional differences, right? Like if you've got a team member that's got a particular health situation, they're not going to feel comfortable necessarily coming back into the office, regardless of the situation, until there's a vaccine or something.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, look, I think it's going to be interesting. I would strongly advocate that organisations have teams that are either in-person teams or online teams, and the team just either operates 100% online or the team operates 100%
In the office.
in person and in the office. And if you have a train that has both, then any train level ceremony, everybody goes to a desk
And they
and a
do it
video
online.
camera, and we do it that way. I think the thing that seems to be most sticky about the physical environment and safe is PI planning. Well, everybody
Mm.
has nobody missed a beat, right? I mean, that was cool. Nobody missed a beat. No one's PI planning slipped. Everybody just went. They were all online, so we'll just PI plan online. It'll be fine. And you know, we saw people use whatever infrastructure they had available to them.
Yeah. Cool.
So you know, I'm sure, you know, a number of people called you folks and said, we need a tool. But you know, some just went, you know, we have Google Suite, we have Microsoft, whatever it is, we have this, we have that. We're just going to make it work. And no matter what they use, they made it work, and they ran the events, and the events were effective, and they got the outcomes. You know, the big thing that is missing is that energy. You can't get the energy of 100, 200 people in a room from an online event. But mechanically,
We can achieve it.
we can achieve it. So yeah, we hear everybody wants to go back to PI planning in person because of the social, because of the energy, which I think is awesome. You know, absolutely think that is awesome. And I can sort of see this world in which people do a lot more work from home, work remote, whatever that looks like. And then the PI planning events are the things that we do to bring ourselves together and reconnect on that, you know, 8, 10, 12-week basis. That's my feeling. Could be wrong. But
I, I guess I'll be really interested to see how it plays out, and I think we should return to this conversation in 12 months, Em, because
yeah, oh no.
I'm just thinking what's going through my mind is one of our customers in New York, financial services company, and for one of their arts, it was 150,000 US exercise to bring their people together once a
Yeah,
quarter,
wow.
and I'm now going, I'm like, okay, yes, they're doing it digitally now, that's
Yeah.
fine. They're going to miss out on things, but if they lose the budget, do they have to fight to get the budget back, or does the budget sit there? And there's these other there's these other unknown kind of ramifications of this shift over the course of 2020 that we're yet to see play out, I guess.
I think you're right. And I think it'll be particularly interesting for the trains that are being launched remotely. So if your train
Oh,
is being launched remotely, do you ever?
so that not existing trains that have been working together for 6, 12, 18 months, but you want to get a brand new train started. Have you
And
have you done that remotely this year with some of your clients?
so we're in the process of doing it now.
Oh,
So we
cool.
had
Tell
one
me.
go. We had one go just literally just before the lockdown. So they did their first PI planning face to face, and then immediately moved to remote working. And yeah, now working on remotely launching a train. But it's from us, for our perspective, we have a playbook. It's a bunch of workshops. It's, you know, a bunch of classes. There's really we use you know, we just use online collaboration tools. We've found things that, you know, replicate the sort of tools that we would have in a physical room. And you know, the joy of being able to read people's post-it notes, right? This has been the absolute highlight for me. The joy of being able to read people's post-it notes. Um,
No
and
more hieroglyphics.
yeah,
Like, what
absolutely.
what is that you wrote, Sally? Yeah.
and everyone can see everything at once, right? So you think about, the classroom and the workshop where there's a group of people huddled around post-its and a flip chart paper, and they're still huddled in a way in their virtual huddle, but everybody can read, right? It's not that I'm not close enough. I can't read your handwriting. There's this great equalizer is the online world. So I think that's great. I think the challenge for the trains launched on remotely is going to be, do you ever get the face-to-face experience? Because if I go back over the years, one of the things we know is your first PI planning event sets the standard. So people kind of get this imprint in their heads of what is possible. And for example, if you skip something in your first PI planning event, you just decide to, I don't know, skip the confidence vote or something weird like that. You don't do the Rome of the risks, or you just skip something. You never do it because you were successful without it.
Yeah, okay.
You're successful without it. So every compromise you make, and you make a series of compromises, and then you're successful despite those compromises, and that becomes false positive feasibility. It tells you, yes, I was right. I didn't need to do those things because I was awesomely successful and I didn't do these things. So it's the learning.
That's confirmation bias, is it?
Yeah, that's it. That's the one. Confirmation bias. That's exactly it. Yep.
Okay.
And I think there's going to be a bunch of confirmation bias in these remotely relaunched trains, and unless they're inside organisations where there's enough knowledge of SAFE and the physical PI planning to know that there's going to be value in bringing them together. But I can see that being a real challenge. I think trains that are launched online may never go into a physical PI planning event because of that.
Okay.
Confirmation bias.
All right. I want to come back to something you said before about the leaders, and you mentioned the trust, the openness to learning and experimentation, and the discipline. I was going back over your Safe Global 2018 talk.
Oh yeah.
About the 7 traits of highly effective servant leaders.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I guess I had some questions about this, and obviously these are 4 of the traits. Like, what are the other 3 traits that I'm missing? And then I've got a follow-up question about some of the actual things that you talked about that you picked up in your trip.
Be interesting. I wonder if those 4 are on the list I had in 2018.
I'll quiz you on it.
How awkward. So in 2018, the answer was people first, respect for people, that sort of lens. Lean thinking, manager, teacher, learner. So we had that one, yeah, learner. Kaizen crazy. What else did I have? Ocean Henry.
Yeah, okay. I wanted to talk about that one, actually. I made a note about that. What is that? And are there examples of that in the West?
It's a lot of people talk about True North.
Ocean Canry, True North.
True North. It's the translation I got, which I got from Mr. Yoshino, who partnered with Katie Anderson for the Lean Study tour I did in, I don't know, 2018, I think. So the translation he gave was direction and management sort of thing. So it's mission, right? It's strategic mission. It's that sort of thing.
So just sidebar here for anyone that hasn't seen Em's talk on this. There's a woman by the name of Katie Anderson. She runs an annual, I think. I guess not this year, but she runs.
No, not this year. She did not go this year.
Not this year. Runs an annual lean Kanban Kaizen study tour to Japan and visits. Who did you visit, Em? You visited with Katie and how many were in the crew that you went over there with?
So I think it was a group of about 20 from memory. Katie lived in Japan for 2 years,
Right.
and then went back to the US. She lives in San Francisco, I think. And while she was there, she really liked the idea of putting together these lean study tours. And she was already a lean practitioner, more in the sort of healthcare side of things. So she got the opportunity to, we actually were on the test run tour.
Cool.
So this was her experiment. She had a relationship with Ohio State University, and they brought some people to the table, and she brought some people to the table, and they made it happen. And she also had an existing relationship with Mr. Yoshino, who was John Shook's first manager at Toyota. So he's a 40-year Toyota veteran. He came with us for the week. So we of course went to Toyota, but we went to a bunch of Toyota suppliers as well. Isuzu, Mifune. Then we also went to Japan Post, which was fascinating. We went to a city, which name escapes me right now, but they call it 5S City, because all the companies in that city practice the 5S, the manufacturing 5S.
Tell me about it. I think I don't. It's not coming to mind. I don't feel comfortable, familiar.
You don't feel good about 5S?
No.
No, that's not good. So how would I the 5S is 5 Japanese words, which I'm going to go. My Japanese nothing. But it's about standardized work. So, for example, when you go into the 5S factories, you'll see the floors marked up where you need to stand to do a particular job. But yeah,
this is what Paul Akers picked up for his.
I don't know.
I feel like I've seen Paul Akers videos and of their manufacturing in the US, but everything's marked up, and okay.
Probably that would be my guess. We should ask Katie.
We can ask Paul, and we can ask all these people. There's time. Okay.
We can.
And so that lean tour, the Japan study tour, like that was a super effective and motivating thing for you.
Yeah, it was, for me. It was very reinforcing. So I had my own lens on what lean leadership meant, and I found that particular tour to be very reinforcing around the value set that I believe is part of that. Katie does curate a tour that is designed to show you that. So she's also very clear that says, this is not Japan, right? This is not every organization in Japan. This is not every leader in Japan. This is I've handpicked a series of lean leaders to show you it being practiced. But it was certainly very reinforcing for me. So very similar messages I picked up in terms of how I like to lead, how I coach others to lead, was built into that. The messages that she delivered. So it was very cool. It was very cool. And some of those leaders just so inspiring, particularly Kaizen. I think the thing that just really hits you in the face as you're talking to these folks is Kaizen, right? This drive to get better, and they're
all the time.
They're all the time, absolutely. And it's these folks looking for the 1 second, right? The 1 second improvements. There's a video that floats around. I don't know if you've seen the Formula One video where they do the changeover in 63 and it takes them over a minute, and they do the changeover in 90 something in Melbourne and it takes them 6 seconds, or whatever it is. It's like that, right? It's how do I find 1 more second, half a second? They're just so driven. If I can remove a step that someone has to take, can I move something closer to somebody?
There was some comment in the presentation that you gave. There was some comment about, if I have to take another five steps, that's an extra 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And then that's an extra 10 seconds every time I do this activity every day.
Yeah.
And that all adds up. And so how do we shave these seconds off?
Yep.
Be more effective and deliberate about how we do this.
Yeah, and that was just huge, right? So I called it Kaizen crazy in the presentation. I mean, just so driven to improve, and just tiny, small improvements every day.
And so one of the other practices that I didn't kind of grok out of that talk was about the bus stop. And what was the bus stop about?
That in that talk, really?
I'm forcing you to stretch your mind
You
back.
are quite right. It really was. Oh, okay, so oh, you're awful.
Yes.
Yes, you are. Okay, so effective leaders are human was the tagline on that one. It was really about leaders being down to earth, and being one with the teams. So things I saw in Japan. One of this factory run by a woman, Agara Metals, I think it was. So very unusual. Not a lot of women leaders in Japan. Her husband took her name because Agara. It's a really interesting character.
Okay.
But her company has a bunch of morning rituals. You always say good morning and thank you, and how they talk every day, and everybody talks and everyone interacts. And then one of the other places we went to, they all had their uniforms they wore in the factory, but everybody wore the uniform, right? The CEO, the office workers, everybody wore the uniform. Everyone was at one. And then I was thinking about my experience leading teams, and a lifetime ago I was working with a team that decided to enter a corporate competition. And this competition was about showing your colors and showing the corporate values, which were things like better together and courage, and then sort of a rainbow theme. So this team decides what they're going to do is they're going to dress up in the rainbow colors, and they're going to be better together and show their courage, and they're going to do the Macarena, and they're going to video it, and that's going to be how they're going to win this competition. I do not participate in this Macarena, because someone has to take photos and stuff, right? How else are they going to enter the competition? So I had to do my bit. Anyway, we also had this ritual, which was about teams bringing challenges to leadership to resolve, and they do that at the end of every sprint. So they do this Macarena, and they enter the competition. And at the end of the sprint, they bring their challenges to leadership, and their challenge is Em did not do the Macarena. You are our leader. You did not do the Macarena. We are feeling very challenged by that, and we're bringing this to you to resolve. I went and spoke to the team that raised and said, "Look, I got to tell you, can't do the Macarena." So sorry. And I still remember this so clearly. One of the guys said to me, I read this blog about the importance of leaders being vulnerable. You know who wrote that blog post, don't you?
Oh, Em. Oh, love it.
So we negotiated. I said, look, I think I can manage the bus stop. For those not from Australia, we grow up doing this in high school dances in my part of the world anyway. So I grabbed my leadership team, and we did do the bus stop, and it was part of proving that we too were the same as everybody else, and doing our bit, and responding to the team's feedback. So yes, that is where the bus stop fits in. Thanks so much for that, Nick.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Now I'm glad that I got that context. I think I try and do similar things. It's a karaoke or something, although we haven't done that in a while. Yeah, okay. So I guess the thrust of that talk was really about to lead is to serve, and it was all about being in service of. And it sounds like what you took from the Japan study tour was these leaders there were very much in service of their people.
Absolutely.
Do you see that as a trait that is prevalent in the best performing companies that you deal with, and how likely are they over a 5-10 year horizon, whatever that happens to be, to outperform their competitors or to be more successful in their market, or however they define success?
I certainly see a correlation between leaders that like to serve and or choose to serve and success with scaled agile and business, because I guess we have seen over to close to 10 years is those who practice scaled agile framework with discipline get results, and they get
Mm,
significant results. They improve their ability to deliver products and services. Their cost base goes down, their quality goes up, their people are happier, their attrition goes down. I mean, we see it
yeah.
every single time. What we also see is when the leaders don't walk the talk, right? When the leaders are paying lip service to the transformation, it doesn't stick. They don't get the results. People don't find it a better place to work. People aren't bought into the change. So there is definitely a correlation there. You can get pockets of wonderfulness inside an organization. We often observe that the organization that's transformation is as successful as the most bought in leader, most senior bought in leader. So if you're the leader of a train and you show the right behaviors, your train will be great,
Successful.
but that means nothing for the broader organization.
Mm,
Solution train, a business unit, what have you. You see this thing that goes from the leader. If the leader's showing the right behaviors, you get within that space, you get the behaviors, you get the change, you get the results. But leaders who say one thing and do another, people don't buy it, right?
and this is, I mean, I guess this is true of any change, organizational change, isn't it?
Yeah.
You kind of hit the boundaries of your pocket, as you said, within the organization, and then you meet the real world, the rest of the organization, and people maybe they don't have enough energy, or they don't feel that they can influence and change that, and so they just kind of like live within their bubble because they don't feel that they can exert the pressure outside of that.
Yeah. Look, I certainly I've seen successful bubble influence organizations.
Okay.
Successful bubbles can become interesting. The Chip and Dan Heath's book, which one
Oh,
was it? Switch.
yeah, switch. Yeah.
Shine a light on a bright spot or something like that. So bright spots, inspire. And if you can create a bubble in an organization that outperforms the rest of the organization, or even just performs better than it has previously, then everybody looks, right?
Mm,
Everybody looks at the organized part of the organization that goes from poor delivery to great delivery and says, what is going on here?
mm.
And that inspires others to get interested. One of the really interesting things we've seen in Australia, we can trace pretty much every safe implementation in Australia back to the one at Telstra.
Yeah, right.
So you
They
can
all spun
see,
off from that, from the people that were part of it.
well, no, people who came and saw it, people who were
Ah,
inspired by it.
they're not
So
necessarily directly involved in it.
no,
Okay.
people came and got inspired by it, and then they went did their thing, and then they inspired someone else, and we can web together. I haven't tried to do it recently, but at a point in time we could web together all of them because we could count them and we could see them.
Yeah.
But we can web together most of them. These still that says you saw someone who saw someone who saw someone who actually was someone who went to visit us at Telstra back in 2012, 2013, and got inspired. So that bright spot can be really, really powerful, and that's what it takes, right? You create a little bit of noise, a little bit of difference, and people start to ask what's going on. I wouldn't say it's foolproof. I think it still requires, so someone's got to come, they've got to see, and then they've got to have the the courage to do it for their part of the organization. And
Yeah.
that's the hard bit, right? I can come, I can see, I can get inspired, but am I prepared to put myself out there?
Mm.
And there's a lot to be said for leaders who are prepared to take risks. That was one of
This was
the
your lesson about the bus stop, right? Like, you have to put yourself
yeah.
out there and be vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And this was actually, I was thinking, it's the thing I was talking about at last year's Safe Summit was be safe or be safe. Um,
Be safe or be safe. Tell me
yeah,
about that.
So be safe, don't take a risk, or be safe, as in the Scaled Agile framework, and take that leap of faith. And it comes back to, we started talking today about, when I did this at Telstra, I didn't really understand that this wasn't a normal everyday, this is what everybody did sort of thing. It was a very new thing. So I took a risk from a perspective that I was a business leader in a technology space, and I really felt I had nothing to lose. So I look back at that and go, what on earth possessed me? And I go, well, I'm this business person leading this technology team. I wasn't supposed to succeed anyway. So, in fact,
Put it all on the line, right?
I found out later they actually had a plan for when I did not succeed. I was supposed to fail.
What?
Um,
How much waste is that? Like, why did they plan for something before it was? Okay.
Organizational politics. What can I tell you? Anyway, I did not fail. I did succeed, and because I took some crazy calculated risks, and I've seen it time and time again. Right, so many of these leaders and these companies that make this change are taking a leap of faith. And I'm always saying, I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen. I don't know whether you're going to get 10% cost out or 50% cost out. I don't know if your people are going to be 10% happier or 50% happier. I don't know that. What I do know is if you listen to what we're telling you and you follow the guidance and you behave in line with those lean and agile values, you will get results. You will get results every single time. But you got to be brave enough to buy in and take it on holistically, and not do this thing where you manage to customize your way out of actually doing the
Doing
thing you're
anything.
trying to do.
Yeah. Okay. Em, this is awesome. I want to take, before we finish up, I want to take 2 minutes. You've mentioned books a lot today, and you reminded me of this quote, Vern Harnish, those who read and don't are only marginally better off than those who can't. And so today, so far, you've mentioned Chip and Dan Heath with Switch.
Yep.
You've mentioned the Leffingwell series from
Yes.
the noughties, the late noughties.
Yep.
There might have been a few others, but tell me, what are you reading today? What you've been in lockdown. Like, what are the 2 or 3 top books that you've read since you've been in lockdown in Melbourne?
Oh my goodness. It's very awful. Every time someone asks me, what did you just read? I go, I don't
I don't
know.
remember.
Yeah, remember. It's terrible. What am I reading? I need to open my Kindle. I don't know what I'm reading. Jeffrey Moore, Zone to Win.
Zone to Win.
Zone to Win. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah. Okay.
Newer book. I know this year. So obviously I read The Build Trap this year.
Yep, Melissa Perry. You mentioned that one. Yeah.
Yep. I've read Project to Product, McKirsten.
What was that one? Project to Product.
Yeah, Project to Product, McKirsten, one of the IT Revolution Press books.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So released just over a year ago.
Okay.
Very tied up in the Safe 5.0
Oh
release.
yes. Yep.
The other book tied up in the Safe 5.0 release is John Cotter's Accelerate. So I picked that back up. I read it a number of years ago when it first came out. But I like to revisit stuff when Safe puts it front and center. Seems to make some sense to do that at that point in time.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting that the thinking about Vern Harnish, like the scaling up framework, which
Yes.
obviously no relation to scaled agile for anyone that's not familiar, but so much of the scaling up framework about scaling businesses, they draw on so much content from existing authors, existing tomes, points of reference and experience, and it's super valuable. And I guess Safe is no different, right? It draws on this wisdom of the collective wisdom.
Absolutely. Dean was very fond of saying in the early days, we stand on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah.
Quote from somebody else whose name escapes me.
Yeah, okay. Oh, well, Em, look, I wanted to thank you so much for your time this morning. This has been fantastic.
No worries. It's great to catch up with you.
Yeah, I guess my takeaways from this, I like the be safe or be safe. Like either be safe and don't take any risks, or be safe and actually put yourself out there and step into scaled agile. I definitely have to go and do a bit of research on the 5 S's as
Yes.
well, and learn a bit more about that. But thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No worries, Nick. Great to see you.